Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom, and this is usually totally awesome, try something new and talk about it Tuesday. But since we're all really trying something new on a kind of continuing basis now, I'm going to change that up a little bit. I'm going to change it to totally awesome tips about how to deal with this new everything that we're going through. So as we continue to navigate the COVID-19, I've been trying to gather as much info as I can on ways of surviving the social distancing and surviving not getting COVID-19, because as we all have discovered probably many times, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So they're now saying that it's really probably a pretty good idea to wear some kind of a mask or even just something like a scarf or bandana when you go out, because they are finding that the droplets or whatever there's some aerosol aspect to it. One example was, I guess I'm in Anacortes here in Washington. There was a choir with 60 people that decided to have a practice at someone's home, and they used all of the preventive measures. They had hand sanitizer, and they stayed a distance apart, and they didn't hug or touch each other. They made sure that they didn't, exchange items. But about 3 weeks after the practice, 45 of the 60 people came down. They tested positive for the COVID-19, and 2 of them have passed away. So they figured that somehow it was passed through the air, and probably because they were singing, they were, putting more molecules of whatever out into the air. So I guess I tried yesterday when I went out, I tried wearing a scarf around, because I don't have a mask. And it's kind of difficult to keep it on, but I guess there's ways of figuring out those little issues if it's going to keep us from getting the virus. So they say it's also a good idea to drink lots of hot liquids, because I guess the virus gets into your throat first, and it stays there for up to 5 days before it goes down into your lungs, where it really creates the problem. And I guess hot liquids can kill it or break it up enough so that it goes down into your digestive system, and then your stomach acids kill it. So lots of soup, tea, just coffee, hot liquids. So we have a great show planned for today. I have Nikki Rausch here, and she is the Sales Maven, and she's a sales trainer. And after 25 years of selling experience herself for such organizations, or to such organizations as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Hewlett Packard, and NASA, Nikki decided to trade in her road warrior status so she could help entrepreneurs sell in a way that builds relationship, creates true connection, and results in more relationships and closed sales deals, as well as long-term clients. Now, as a sales coach, author, and speaker, and the founder of Sales Mavern, Nikki transforms the misunderstood process of selling into techniques, tools, and tips that can successfully be incorporated into a process that anyone whose livelihood relies on selling can use to sell their products, services, or themselves. When she's not helping business owners get more clients, using what she calls the selling staircase, Nikki enjoys taking in the beauty of the Pacific Northwest. So before we get started on some other questions, Nikki, could you tell us a little bit about what led you to your current path?
Sure, thanks. And thanks for having me, Kate. I'm excited to be here. So, what led me to my current path was I, as you read, have an extensive background in sales, specifically in the technology space. And in addition to that, I am a master certified practitioner of Neurolinguistic Programming, which is the study of communication and the way we process information and the way we speak and our habits and patterns. And I started studying neurolinguistic programming in my corporate career as a way to improve my selling skills. And what I found is that it improved all of the relationships in my life. I became a much better communicator. I was more clear. I had more flexibility in my schedule, or not in my schedule, more flexibility in my approach. And it just allowed for the conversations to flow more smoothly. And so when I kind of got to a place in my career where I was starting to feel a little bit like, is this it? Is this what I'm going to be doing in 10, 15, 20 years? I got really curious about that. And I ended up leaving my corporate career and starting to work to help build my NLP teacher's business. I went to work with her and build her business. And that was the first time I started networking with entrepreneurs. And the more I got to know these entrepreneurs, the more I kind of fell in love with them and their passion and, their servant's heart. And the reason that they started their business was, to make a difference in the world. And as I was getting to know a lot of them, I realized that many of them struggled with sales conversations. And it was really because they didn't quite understand kind of what's the structure behind a sales conversation and how do you seamlessly move somebody through the process and get to that place where you exchange dollars for services or product. And because I'd been doing it for so long and really enjoyed the selling process and really enjoyed the conversation process, somebody had pulled me aside and suggested that I start a business and help teach entrepreneurs how to sell effectively. And my business was really born out of helping people see them get success and realizing that skills that felt pretty easy to me weren't easy for everybody because they had never been trained or taught them. And so here I am almost 7 years later, having the time of my life doing the, best job ever, which is helping people be more effective so they can serve more people and ultimately bring more revenue into their business.
I don't think I've ever heard that background, and it I guess that explains why I like your selling process.
Thank you.
Okay. So most people would rather do anything than sales. You seem to love it, and you're very passionate about it, helping others. So where did that passion for sales come from?
I think where the passion comes from is that I am really about building strong relationships, and everything I teach is based on a foundation of having rapport with the person that you're in conversation with, and that it's your job to continuously build rapport with the other person. And from building rapport, it develops these strong connections and relationships, and then the selling process gets easier. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is I truly am somebody who believes passionately that in order to make the impact in the world with your business, there has to be a revenue generating component to it. Otherwise, you have a hobby and not a business. And it's hard for you to make a bigger impact in the world without having that revenue piece. And so I like to help people make money, because I know that the people that I work with who are making money give back into the community and support, their families, their fellow business owners. And it just makes for a better, I think, community for all of us as business, especially entrepreneurs, and women entrepreneurs in particular, as their business grows, they make a positive impact in the lives of the people that they surround themselves with.
Okay. So what is the biggest misconception people have about sales?
I think the biggest misconceptions the biggest one is that people think sales is something you do to someone. And that's not true. Sales actually is something that you should be doing for someone and with someone, not to someone. And so this idea that sales is about manipulating or trying to convince somebody that they need something that they don't need, I think is very old school approach to sales. I also think that as a society, we are much more savvy nowadays that we don't want to be manipulated. We don't want people to treat us like big dollar signs, and we don't want people to try to convince us of anything. So the approach that I take and the approach that I teach is building these strong relationships through rapport, being structured, having a strategy or a structure to what you do, and then allowing for the other person to make a decision. Is this something I'm interested in or not? And either way is okay. But if you never get to that place where you even get to propose something to them or offer something to them, oftentimes you're missing out on working with some of the people that you can make the biggest impact in their life. So this is why I think it's so important.
Can anyone sell? And what's the difference between a good and a bad salesperson?
I do believe that anybody can sell. And I think the difference is, again, focusing on the other person. What's their problem? What's their need? What's their want? Do you have a solution that meets that problem, that need, or that want? And if so, how do you clearly lay it out and make a compelling offer for somebody to want to take the next step? And if not, your job is to not try to create a need or a want or a problem. Your job is to bless and release those people and wish them well. And frankly, stop trying to, be aggressive and push them into making a decision about something that they have no interest in. So I do think anybody can sell. Good salespeople understand the problem, the need, the want, and provide a solution. Bad people, bad salespeople are people who are trying to force a need, a want, or a problem onto somebody who doesn't have one.
Yeah. So as well as people not liking sales, a lot of people really dislike and try to avoid salespeople. Why do you think this is?
I think it's because at some time, somebody tried to convince people that in order to be good at sales, you have to be aggressive and pushy, and you have to find people's pain points and try to, essentially, it's like if somebody has a paper cut, somebody taught them, like, your job is to try to squeeze as much blood out of that paper cut as possible, which I know is like a really right? But that's not your job. Your job is to not give people paper cut, and your job is to not try to like squeeze more blood out of it. That's, it's this idea that people who are pushy and aggressive oftentimes are not being authentic. They're trying to sell like somebody somewhere told them this is the way that you close business. And it leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of somebody who treats you like that, of course you're going to want to avoid salespeople because you've had these bad experiences of somebody who's doing it, frankly, wrong.
So, what are the steps, the 5 steps of the selling staircase that you have?
Yeah. So the selling staircase is the structure that I teach. And I teach this 5-step approach because this comes from my background in neurolinguistic programming, that there's a structure to excellence. And so I have created this signature framework with the idea that if anybody can learn this 5-step approach, and when you understand what step you're on with a client, then it gives you some guidance as to what the next logical step is in the process. And if you follow these 5 steps, you actually make the experience much more pleasant for the potential client. And it takes the pressure off of you to try to be something that you're not. It actually allows for your own personality to shine through. So the 5 steps, step 1 is the introduction piece. That's introducing you to somebody for the first time, creating a powerful first impression, and or introducing somebody you've known for a long time to the idea of potentially working with you. Once you've made that introduction, kind of step 2 in the process, the next step is to create some curiosity. How do you test the waters to see if this person that you're in conversation with or that you're communicating with in some way has any interest at all? And usually you'll know that if you're able to create a little curiosity, because they'll want to know more. They'll ask you questions. They'll give you buying signals. And once that happens, then you can logically move and invite the person to move to step 3 in the process, which is discovery. Now that for some people is considered a consultation call. For some others, it might just be a really quick kind of conversation with somebody. And your job in the discovery step is to understand what's the problem, what's the need, what's the want, and then ask strategic questions that lead people down that path to saying, yes, I'm a good potential fit for what you offer, or no, I'm not. And once you've figured that out, you can move to step 4 with permission from the client, which step 4 in the process is the proposal. And that's where you lay out a potential offer, a way that somebody could get that need, that want, that desire met. And basically, this is where people start to talk the money, right? This is what it would cost for them to get this need, problem, solution met. And you lay it out in a really clear way so that you can move to step 5, which is the close. And the close is about issuing very specific invitation language for somebody to decide, do I want to hire Kate? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, it's totally fine, bless and release. But if the answer is yes, it's so important that you follow through these steps. And the reason I teach the 5 steps is one of the mistakes that I was seeing made over and over and over by people, especially entrepreneurs, is they were trying to skip steps in the process. They were going like from introduction right to proposal. And when you skip steps in the process, this is where it breaks down that rapport. And this is where it causes people to feel uncomfortable and kind of feel like you're being salesy and gross.
Yes. So how do you create positive first impressions that really establish a connection?
Well, one of the things you want to do is establish yourself as a professional, right? You're an expert at what you do and who you are. So, one of the tips that I wrote about in my third book was this idea of make sure that when you're introducing yourself to somebody, you're saying something like your name, for instance. I cannot tell you how many times I meet people who don't ever say their name. Like I will say, "Hi, I'm Nikki. It's nice to meet you." And they'll go, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." They don't say their name back. And so that diminishes their credibility a little bit because now it puts the onus on me to have to go, "And your name is?" And if I'm in the position of being the potential client, that's not a good thing for you to do. You don't want your clients to have to ask you something as simple as your name. Like you need to be the professional and establish yourself. Like, I understand social etiquette. I'm somebody you can be in conversation with, and I can do something as simple as introduce myself in a way that makes it easy and comfortable for you to then call me by my name.
Okay. So what is the difference between using a cat calling and dog calling technique to create curiosity?
Okay, so for step 2, this idea of creating curiosity, I often liken creating curiosity to the difference between how you call a dog and how you call a cat. So bear with me for a second because I know this sounds like I'm crazy, but hopefully it'll make sense. If you think about when somebody's trying to get the attention of a dog, they often will do this like high pitched, high energy, like, "Come here, boy, come here," right? It's this like, "Oh, I'm so excited and I want you to be excited too. So let's do something fun." And dogs respond to that energy because they're like, "Oh, maybe we're going to go for a walk or I might get a treat or something fun's going to happen." And when you show up in conversation and maybe you are really excited about your product or about your service, if you show up with dog calling energy, people do not respond to that. And I'm sure you've probably been at a networking event where you've been on the receiving end of somebody coming over and being like, "Kate, I want to tell you everything that I do and all the things about me that make me so great. And you're going to be so excited to learn about me. You're going to want to hire me on the spot," right? And you're like, "Who are you?" And I didn't even ask these questions, right? That is what I call dog calling energy in events and in conversation with people. When you have that, it's also what I call word vomiting. I don't know if you've ever felt like someone word vomited all over you, but that doesn't feel good. That doesn't allow for good conversation. So the flip side of that is creating what I call here kitty kitty responses. So this is that cat calling energy. If you want to get a cat's attention, if you play a little bit more like here kitty kitty, here kitty kitty, a cat is more inclined to be like, "What? Tell me more. What are you doing? Or maybe I'll check you out." And that's how you want to show up in conversation. So an example of what I call a here kitty kitty statement is how you answer some pretty basic questions. So for instance, if somebody said, "Hey Kate, how have you been?" You could have an answer that's like a dog calling answer where you tell them every little thing that you've done throughout the whole day. And then they're like, "I'm sorry I asked." You could also have an answer that would say like, "Oh, I've been good. How have you been?" That's an okay answer, but that doesn't actually open the door for somebody to want to know more about you and what's going on. So I want you to say something that opens the door for them to then ask you a question. So you might say right now like, "Oh, I've been great. My radio show is doing so well." And then somebody be like, "You have a radio show? What's the show about? Tell me more about this." Well, now you have permission to talk more about what you're doing. Or if you're launching a new program, you might say something about, "Oh, I've been working really hard on the launch of my new program." And somebody could go, "Oh, well, what's your new program?" Right? Now you've got permission to talk about it. And we're just kind of putting it out there to see if somebody's like, "Oh, that's nice. Good for you. Here's what's going on with me." Well, that didn't really create curiosity. And that could be because they're not interested, they're not a prospective client, or they didn't pick it up, right? But you've got to test the waters all the time because you never know if you're talking to somebody who is a potential client if you don't create any curiosity.
Yes. So how do you recognize and respond to buying signals?
So a buying signal is a verbal or a nonverbal cue that somebody gives that indicates interest. An example of a buying signal is if somebody said to you, like maybe you're launching a new program and they go, "Oh, tell me more about your program." And you start to tell them and they go, that sounds like something that I might be interested in. That's a huge buying signal right there because they've indicated in some way some interest. So now how you act on this buying signal is you invite them to the next step, which is the discovery. And the way you do that is to say, "Oh, well, is that something you'd like to learn more about?" What you don't do is just launch into this big long diatribe about the program and why they should sign up for it. Like, we need to get their permission to move to discovery. So that's how you act on a buying signal. Or it could just be like, "Hey, I'd like to buy something from you, Kate." That's a pretty obvious buying signal. And in those cases, I want you to say, "Great. How would you like to pay for that?" You have to like follow up with something when you get a buying signal. You can't just say, "Great," because then they don't know what to do. So make it easy for people to take the next step with you.
So how can you be sure that you're offering services that the client needs and not what you think they can afford?
So this is what I talk about here is that it's so important when you have done a great discovery, when you have really understood what's their problem, what's their need, what's their desire or want. Your job is to recommend what you know they need. Be the expert. Stand in that place of credibility and make a strong recommendation for them. And one of the mistakes that people often make is in the selling process, as the seller, we try to sell from our client's wallet. We try to decide what they can afford. And frankly, it's none of your business unless they've been really candid and told you, "This is how much money I have to spend." Most people don't do that. So instead, be an expert, recommend what they need, and let them say yes or no, or "It's out of my budget," or "It is in my budget." Don't try to sell from their wallet because it's not your place.
Okay, so what is your top tip for being a salesperson that people are glad to see?
Well, build rapport first. I will say relationship first, rapport always. So I always think about every time I come into contact with somebody, I imagine that I have a rapport bank account with them. And my job is to always try to make a deposit in that rapport bank account. And that means putting the relationship first. Because sometimes, let's be truthful, I make missteps with people. I make mistakes. I maybe am not as careful in my language, or maybe I'm having a bad day and I'm not as patient as I would normally be. And if I make a withdrawal, that might close the account. So the job here is to make as many deposits as possible so that when somebody is potentially interested in working with you, you are going to be their first choice because they're like, "I love Kate. Kate loves me. I feel like she really cares about me as a person. So when I need what she does, she's my go-to." Because you've spent the time building relationship. You've made some deposits in that rapport account.
Okay, so what is your typical client that comes to you for help or that you go to and demonstrate that they need help? Who is this client?
So my ideal client is oftentimes a female business owner who has been in business for at least a year, maybe up to about that 10-year mark, and recognizes that they are struggling through sales conversations, whether it's a lack of confidence or they're just not really sure what to do or what to say, or they're having a lot of consultations and they're spending, an hour on a consultation call and the person's still not taking that next step with them. Those are ideal clients for me because I can help those people pretty quickly make some transition, build their confidence, help them understand the process. What's the language that moves your client through the process, gets your discovery consultation calls to 30 minutes or less, so that you really are being strategic in your conversations. And all of that can be done with this idea of, relationship first, rapport always.
Okay. So we're getting close to the end of our time. If you could leave the listeners with one takeaway from today's show, what would you want that to be?
The takeaway that I hope that you take from this show is that it really is your job to increase your ability to sell strategically, to put the client at ease. And by you doing that, you are going to make the process so much better for the prospect or the client. And then it will make it easier for people to buy from you.
Okay, that sounds like good advice to me.
Good.
So if somebody wants to get some help with sales or wants to find out more about what you do, how would they get in touch with you?
So one of the easiest ways to get in touch with me will actually involve me giving you a gift. So I love to give a gift when I get to be a guest on a show. I have an ebook called Closing the Sale that kind of walks you through some of this specific language, gives you some suggestions, will build your confidence through that close process. So you can get that by going to yoursalesmaven.com/soul, SOUL. So yoursalesmaven.com/soul. And then you can download that for free. And now we'll be connected because you'll be on my website. You will have gotten an email from me. And I'd love to hear if you have a question or a takeaway from this episode that you'd love to share with me. Please reach out. I'm happy to hear from your listeners.
Okay. Did you also give them your website? That was part of that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's part of it. So yoursalesmaven.com. You can add that /soul to get the book, or if you just go to yoursalesmaven.com, we will be connect. You'll find me there.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here today, Nikki. I think that everybody needs to know, some of the basics about sales, and that it isn't, such a scary thing that many people think that it is.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, I want to thank the listeners for being here today as well. And we have another great show planned for next week. Next week is Angela Marshall. And Angela Marshall she's a writer and a writing coach, as well as a motivational speaker. And her focus is to empower women and give them a voice. So be sure to tune in next week I'm sure that it'll be a great interview with Angela Marshall. And I have a couple thoughts that I'd like you to carry with you through your week. One is, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. And that was said by Thomas Edison. And another thought, I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions. And that was said by Stephen Covey. And then one last thing, just has nothing to do with sales, but I said it earlier in the show, is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think we should just keep that one in mind right now. So tune in next Tuesday, 3 p.m. for another great show and a chance to gain some soulfire wisdom.
Thank you for listening to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to soulfire wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.